Thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Wilson.
And I'm Chris Hemke.
And this is Diesel Performance Podcast. Guys, today we have on somebody who's made a big splash in the national scene and somebody who's also been a guest on the show a handful of times, all the way back from the last Diesel Power Challenge.
The OG at 3,000 horsepower.
Yeah, that's it. Chris Patterson from Unrivaled Diesel. Chris, how the hell are you?
We're doing good. How about y'all?
Doing great,
you know. We're we made it back in one piece, so UCC is behind us. We see you as well. You're back home, so
I'm sure just like you, we spent the weekend getting a tan and shaking hands.
That's right. There's nothing else. Just
something like that, right?
Yeah.
Chris, you got an amazing truck. It's something. I still remember this. First time I met Chris, he looks across from me at a breakfast table at a hotel. I was like, yeah, I know the podcast. You guys are the ones that said, oh, it's just another Cummins, and then moved on and didn't talk about my truck at all. And I was like, ooh, that was...
It wasn't you guys, it was him. So just so we're clarifying on record.
Yep, that's right.
Back in Diesel Power Challenge, they'd published the article, and we were trying to go through all of the trucks that were competing, and I think there was 4 Duramaxes, 4 Power Strokes, and 45 Cummins. Yeah. So at some point, we lost sight.
45. Well, there is
duration, but there were a lot of Cummins trucks.
There's no way to fact check me. It's 2022.
They don't even do that anymore. So where are we at?
Now you got to go to DPC, but as the alternate, you got to spectate the whole time. So I think you got your first sled pull in that weekend. God, was that back in 2018, 2019? 2019, I think.
I believe it was 19.
Awesome. And then going into 2021, you joined in out on kind of an East Coast, I would call, competition called the All Truck Challenge, or what's the other name of it?
King of the Street.
Gotcha. Give our listeners a refresher. What was that competition, and what did you bring to the table?
That was a street truck-oriented competition where you had to have full doors, full bed, glass all the way, and you had one truck that had to do a 100-mile street drive, 8th-mile drag race, dirt drag, sled pull, and dyno competition. You had to have the same engine. If you pulled it out, you were deducted, but you could change tires and wheels and turbos and injectors. And it just showcased the very versatility of the diesel technology and street truck application. And then we went 19, and it was very last minute for us, but we went coming on 2,000 horse, and we spun a rod bearing 3 rounds in the drag racing. So we had to come home. I wasn't willing to just patch it at the track. It wasn't fair for the truck. And then we went back in 2021, I think. Yep. No, yeah, we went 20. 20 was the first year for me. 19 was DPC. 20 was the first year of All Truck Challenge. 21 was the second year we went. And at that point, I think we had already done 2,500 horse. And we had our ducks in a row this time. We had plenty of parts. We still literally got our butt kicked. We had broke the transmission first round. We were up all night on the gooseneck trailer, taking the transmission out to fix it in the pouring rain and 43-degree weather. Fixed the tranny, slept for 45 minutes, added transmission fluid, did the street drive at 8 o'clock the next morning. That's literally the order of events that happened then. And then we wound up breaking the transmission again in the dirt drag portion, and we fixed it. And then sled pull, we broke an axle, and then we fixed that. And then we went on the dyno. And I'll tell you, like I've told everybody else, there was a conversation between Robert, the owner of that dyno, and Sarah, the coordinator of the event, that I wanted to go towards the end of the pack. And we were going to swing twice. The first pull was going to be 24 to 2,500. That would establish first place and go do a good, safe number that wouldn't hurt the truck. And then we were going to back everybody up and turn it up, because on paper, we believed we had 3,000 horsepower. And whenever we did the math years in the past and we thought we had 2,000, we went to a dyno, and we did. Then we thought we had 2,500, and we went to the Northwest Dyno Circuit for diesel on the mountain in Vandermeer, and we did have it. And so we thought we had 3. And so we swung, and we did have 3. Whether you want to talk smack about whatever dyno it was on, regardless of the fact, the truck was there and the truck did it. So then we got second in that event, and then we went to UCC this year.
Okay. What was some of the changes that you had from King of the Street All Truck Challenge, coming off of that 3,000 horsepower on the dyno there to preparing for UCC 2022?
We didn't really change the truck a lot. We made some small changes from things we were seeing, but the biggest thing we did was reinforce our infrastructure on parts. We had 3 engines, 3 whole transmissions, 12 turbochargers, 2 sets of injectors, 2 pumps, and we really had a backbone for the support system. I have very, very, very good people that are on my team, and we had a great way to get up and back on an 18-wheeler that relieved the load on us and was able to make us carry more stuff. Like, you can't really carry these engines around in the bed of like a flatbed trailer. And then we rented a tent, and we were like a big shop, like all professional and stuff. It was amazing. We had golf carts to drive around on. Like, it was great. So that was the biggest change we did. The truck itself did not change a lot. We put some fiberglass bedsides on it. We got some Bogarts. We got some big MH Race Masters, but mainly spare parts and people to help that knew what they were doing.
Give us a rundown of the truck setup. What do you have? What was the turbo, the fuel system? What was the setup you brought to UCC this year?
We brought the same motor that we did 3,000 on, which is, we have duplicates now, which is a Hamilton competition block, wet block that we filled, D&J stage 3 head, D&J rod, a set of flex diesel 450% comp hybrids, 2 14mm extra G race pumps, a VS Racing 8396 double ball bearing on the manifold, a VS Racing 106 113 triple ball bearing on the atmosphere, 2 Nitrous Express Lightning 375 solenoids, 2 Nitrous Express 15300L solenoids, and a spool jet, and then 48 RE and we build all this here. So it's my motor, my training, my turbo kits, and all that. The only thing we don't do is tune.
Okay.
So give our listeners an idea here, because as we've been talking to guys, Chris, I noticed we have a lot of big names that have been around the industry for 10, 15, 20 years. They're very well established. They're pretty large shops, pretty large online retail operations and things like that are usually tied to them. Give our listeners a little bit of insight. What does your shop look like?
We're little bitty. We got 5 bays, and we only do Dodge diesel. Anywhere from brakes, front end, steering, AC, transmissions, to built motors, built trannies, compound kits, like back halves, cages, kind of whatever you want as far as the Dodge diesel is concerned. We're kind of a 3rd-gen specialist. So I have a lot of trucks in from multiple states away that are here for months at a time getting great big builds. And then we have Farmer Joe with the 12 valve that just got water in his fuel. So it's a very wide variety.
A very wide variety of only Dodge diesel. Right.
Hey, man.
Yes, that's right. I don't know. I can't spell Duramax Power Stroke. I don't know anything about them. And I've been a Chrysler man my whole life. So why change it?
Stick to what you're familiar with, I mean, there's a lot to be said about that.
That's right. Yeah.
So gearing up, getting ready for UCC, kind of walk through the event, and that's what we all want to hear about. So day one was the drag racing. What were some expectations going into that day, and what were we able to accomplish on day one?
I mean, you had to have the heaviest truck in the field, right?
Biggest.
Probably. I didn't really go comparing numbers and talking with other people. We had our work cut out, and we didn't really have any time to go walk around. But we weighed 5,500 pounds for the drag race portion, and we were going down track at 22 to 2,300. The whole goal for the weekend was, number 1, make 3,000 horsepower. Number 2, finish the event. Well, drag racing wasn't going very well at first. We had some issues. I made some driver errors the first time I left too soft, and then kind of short shifted a little bit, and never really woke up till the back half of the track. And then the second time, I completely smoked my transmission. My shift linkage had came out of adjustment, and it was holding between 2nd and 3rd gear. And you can't really take a transmission and do that wide open with a few kits on. So it completely smoked out 2nd gear. So we just swapped the trannies, and then I decided to do an A to B, because if you don't have a number on the board and you are working during the first 3 time sessions, When it comes up to the fourth, you better just get a good number and not swing for the stars. So that's when we kind of turned it down a little bit and left kind of how you're used to leaving. And we ran the 548. Okay. And then for the fourth pass, we turned it back up. We added in another kit, and it shook the tire right off the bat, drove left, grabbed third. The second kit came on, then it went to the right, and then it kind of went back to the left, and there's a spark show, and everybody freaked out. I don't really see what the big deal was. Some passes are just better than others, and that one just was a really sloppy, spinning tire, smoke tire fest. I mean, it was very fun to drive, I can tell you that.
I mean, what does it feel like, though? I mean, you're in a 5,500 pound
crew
death
long
machine.
Yeah.
I mean, rolling down, literally trying to create an explosion, and it's getting squirrely going left and right. Is that something you have a lot of experience with?
I don't think it was a death machine, but yeah, I mean, how many times do you drive 1,000 horsepower daily driver and you do rolling burnouts every day from like 80 to 120? Like, you can't tell me you've never went out on the freeway and just held it to the wood and just seen how long you could do a rolling burnout. That's kind of how it felt. It was just kind of dancing, grab a gear, hooked up, dancing. Nope, there's another kit. And when you turn on 500 horsepower, things happen.
Yeah. Good way to put it.
That's it, man. Now your setup, how much did you change the setup going from drag racing to going onto the dyno the next day?
That's where another driver mistake was made. The shock settings, we tightened them up a little bit because the anti-squat and the four-link, and that all works on the dyno just like it does the racetrack. The way the axle puts power into the frame and the way the axle's driven down to the roller works the same. So we didn't change that a lot. Maybe I should have put in my sled stops to use the straps on the frame to apply more downward force to the tire. That was my mistake. Whenever we did 3,000 on the yellow dyno from Diesel Doctor at the All Truck Challenge, we didn't put any sled stops. We also didn't put any VHT down. And it hooked up and it worked and the tire stayed planted. Well, this time it didn't really work like that. I don't know. This roller was different. The knurling on the Northwest Dyno Circuit roller is not very deep. So there's no rubber built up on the roller. Well, I didn't put two and two together that if there's no rubber on the roller, VHT is not going to glue the tire to the roller because you can't really glue rubber to bare steel. It just doesn't really work that way. And I made a really bad call, and we decided to put VHT on the tire. We decided not to have a sled bump stop installed so that the frame really wasn't pushing down on the axle. And it didn't work. It didn't work. We had a little team meeting minutes before going on the dyno, and there was an explosion. A motor let go on the dyno right before us. There was fire extinguisher dust everywhere, but the roller looked clean. And so we pulled one kit out of it. We took one whole kit of nitrous out of it to get the A to B number. And that's what we had to have, was the A to B number on the dyno. So we thought, we'll pull one kit, we'll spray it on the dyno, we'll just do our thing and see what happens. And it fell a little bit short. It didn't spin, but it made 2,600 and 3,600, which put us neck and neck with Derek. And then I thought, okay, let's add the second kit. And I think we reapplied VHT, and then it instantly went to tire smoke. As soon as it got to the RPM where everything comes on, instantly smoked the tires on the dyno. I don't mean it slipped the tire on the dyno. It freaking smoked the tires on the dyno. It actually rotated the rim on the street radial on the passenger side and smoked the driver's side tire. So that was pretty disappointing. I decided to bring nitrous a lot later and push the nitrous curve 500 or 700 RPM higher across the different stages to try to get a little bit more wheel speed before you literally turn on 4 or 5 nitrous solenoids. It's so violent, but it happens so quick. You have to have that tire planted. And I couldn't do it. I kept changing it and changing it. I even went from CSP5 to CSP4, which is a significant amount of duration and timing on the way we do it. And it should have made a lot less power, and it made within 100 horsepower. So it was not a horsepower limited problem. It was a traction limited problem. And I kept trying. We even brake cleaned the tire off, and I kept trying. I mean, I did 6 freaking pulls in 30 minutes. So I did what I could do until I had no more time to go. The oil temperature was 168. Coolant was around 190. Like, let's just keep pulling it. I didn't see anything that was scaring me.
6 dyno pulls, and they were all within 24, 26, 2,500 horsepower, or were they all pretty consistent?
No, they were across the board. The first one was 26, 36. The second one, when we really, really smacked it, only did 17. Now, naturally, when you're spinning tires in the dyno, that's not a good valid number to go by, right? So then we turned it down, and I think it was like 24 and 23 and 25 and 25. But I really wasn't looking at the number. I was mainly listening to the motor, because you can tell a difference. When you're in the cab, you can tell a difference in power. And I knew if the pull was good or not. And they were all just kind of around that 25, 26 number. I just couldn't get any more.
Did you start to get kind of panicky? I mean, you get a 30-minute window at UCC, right? So you get to load up. And you said you went after Derek. How far back in the pack were you for the order of the dyno?
I dynoed 14th.
Okay, so pretty close to the end of the pack. Not the last, but pretty close to the end of the pack.
I think there were 3 or 4 that went after I did.
Gotcha. Was there any strategy change once you started seeing this? I mean, I know you guys went out and you kind of taking a look at the tires, taking a look at the traction, playing with the tune. Was this about beating your number or reaching your goal of 3,000 horsepower, or was this about looking at where the competitors were and trying to line yourself up on top of the competitors?
I'm very unique. I don't look at what a lot of other people do. We do what we know, and we focus on our team. I think if you spend a lot of time analyzing and critiquing other people's performance, you'll fall short on your own. You only have so much time, and you can only do what you can do with what you have to work with that day. So after the first rip, I realized, number one, the first rip was the safety number, because we did pull the nitrous back because there was some concern. And so we needed a safe number. So that was the safe number. And we never beat that number. If I didn't pull it and make a conservative pull, I would have had like a 1,700 or a 2,400, and that wouldn't have been enough to place very well. It just happened to fall right where Derek was, which unfortunately, Derek and I were both what I consider wounded on the dyno. Neither one of us got the opportunity we wanted to have. If we would have, I believe it would have been a great 3-way battle, because we were all going to fall right there really close to each other. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. And that's just a fact of racing, that you don't have very much, you don't have a very big effect on the total outcome. The trucks do what the trucks want to do. The air temperature, the humidity, the pressure, it is what it is. You can't change it. And once you spray that compound on the tire and it goes from tacky to greasy, there's nothing you can do about it. We tried scraping it off and we tried wiping it off, and there's nothing we could do. So after I realized what had happened, I was just trying to bring the power later. So the strategy shifted from like a 1 or 2 pull and be done to like an endurance event to try to make it get power later to make horsepower higher. It was something that you can't just get off, right? I couldn't just be like, oh, well, I got 22 minutes left. I'm not hooking up. Let's just pop the straps. Like, that doesn't really fly with me. I'm going to run it till it won't run anymore.
Now,
and it was still running. So,
well, I mean, that to me, I mean, to make only 2,600 horsepower is you know, in its own respectable, right? I mean, there was one truck that really surpassed that. You know, we know Justin Ziegler, right? That we're going to get into here in a few. But with the experience and running the truck 6 times back to back, you know, I would have to imagine that there was not only data collected, but there was an experience and knowledge that we were able to capture in that time to know for the next dyno event or the next time on the dyno, there's going to be things that you're going to change up in your camp to ensure that those mistakes don't happen again.
Absolutely. We're going back in August. The Superflow will be in Denver for the Diesel on the Mountain event again this year. So we're going back to that. It's August 7th. So we're going to take what we learned and we're going to revisit. We've learned a lot now.
Yep.
Apparently you need bead locks or screws in your tires. And then, you know, we learned a lot from Ziegler too. Obviously, when you come out and you do these things, you can see things.
Yep.
And they chose a tire that was different than what anyone else has ever tried. So obviously we're going to try that.
Seeing the truck roll onto the dyno with that wheel tire combo, there was some business. There was a lot more than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
How did you feel? You know, your goal was to go there, 3,000 horsepower, prove a point. fell a little bit short. Again, a respectable number nonetheless. But then to see Justin Ziegler pop not only at that 3,000 horsepower, but get deep into the threes, 3,300. Was that something that you looked at? You were proud of the camp? You were proud of what they did? Was it something that you learned from? Like, okay, I'm going to bring this, reconstruct what I do, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to do something similar. What were the feelings that were going through your head when that dyno pull took place?
In regards to Ziegler's dyno pull, first off, congratulations. This is not an easy feat. But of anybody to complete that feat, we knew that LaVon is the guy that could do that. And with his private testing and his racing experience, he is probably the most qualified person to pull it off. So they tried some things that were different. And running a big tire like that will cost horsepower. But everything in this game has a cost, and you have to pay that cost. And that cost is power. So if that's what it takes to plant a tire and hook up and make 33, it probably cost them several hundred horsepower choosing that tire, but it planted. So that it is what it is. You have to make more power to make more power. And if it cost you power to hook up, then at least you hooked up. So
do you think
we learned a lot from that.
Do you think your truck makes more power than Justin's?
I don't know. I've never even considered that. I don't know. Well, we've increased nitrous 15%, increased air about 18%, and we have a 50% larger nozzle on it now. And we have a good amount of cubic millimeters of fuel more than what we did 3,000 with in Ohio. Now, the differences between the two dynos, it's hard to say. The load on the Northwest Dyno Circuit, in my opinion, is not as strong as what most people make it out to be. You can feel it come on, but after you grab a spool jet and you start throttling in it, you don't have to use the brakes anymore. You can hold the load at 70 or 80% throttle and still maintain RPM and not go wide open during the actual sampling period. So a lot of this is about how you drive your truck and knowing how to drive your truck. And you have a very, very brief window to hit that power and make it hold. As far as who makes more power, I don't know. That's just something a competition like this is going to have to show. It's unfortunate that we weren't able to really show what we can do, but at the same time, it didn't blow up and nobody got hurt. So that's really what counts, right?
That's a win. Yeah, no shit. At this competition, that is.
And I think, again, not taking anything away from Ziegler and the Firepug camp, making the power that they did, but one of the successes that I feel you bring to the table, as I'm looking at the top four, you were the only truck that had one truck, right? One team that had one truck through all the events, which we've talked about this with the other competitors. That's the roots of UCC and why UCC came to be what it is. What do you think about, this three truck rule going into day three? And I'm sure there was a lot of preparation for you coming off the dyno day two, getting ready for sled pull day three, and having some of these other competitors where they didn't do anything wrong, right? The rules are the rules of the competition, and you're either going to take it to your advantage or not. What's your take on the two truck rule that they did for the year 2022?
My personal opinion is I believe it needs to be one vehicle and one shop, because it's a team effort surrounding a competition at this level. I would have a really hard time having someone else represent me for a competition that I'm involved with, that my name's involved with, and my company's involved with. As far as a vehicle is concerned, sure, there are team members that we bring in that bring a certain level of knowledge and experience in different segments of the event, but collectively, it's up to a team to put together the very best product they can do. And I believe it should be one vehicle. We were the top performing team with one vehicle, and we did the whole thing on one vehicle with one engine. Yeah, we smoked 2 or 3 transmissions and we swapped some chargers and stuff around, but it was one truck, one team that pulled it off.
That's awesome.
So I think that's the way it should be. That's how all the other competitions are. If going forward, if you had to have 2 trucks, I think the best way to make that work would be one shop that builds 2 trucks, but not a lot of shops. Number one, not a lot of shops can afford this stuff. This is absolutely astronomically expensive, and it is so sickening that it makes my belly hurt, and my bank account definitely hurts 100%. But if you had to do it, I think you would have to have to do it with 2 trucks from the same shop.
I will say, I know I was scrolling through like the UCC.
You were doing that yesterday.
Page, and there's fans out there who are talking about this 2-truck rule and what do they think. And based on the comments, overwhelmingly there is a demand out there from the spectators that they want to see 1 truck run through all three challenges. Right? That I feel pretty confident in saying that most people want that aspect back. It's very hard, like you mentioned, to have not only to be able to afford to build 2 trucks or bring a team member in that has a second truck, but also just drawing shops in, because there is such a large investment on the shop side. And hey, you came out looking great in this, right? You come out 4th place overall. You're the top competitor to run 1 truck in 3 events. I think we're all expecting you to get like what we would call the UCC bump in your business, right? Yeah. Where now all of a sudden your phones are going to be flooded. You're a national name here for the last couple of years. You know, this should be that point of growth for your business. But we're also watching some of the top competitors throughout the years do this 2, 3, 4 years, and then they're done. And they're just, it's no longer a financially viable for them to go and put a competition together and put a competition vehicle together. So I understand from the organizer standpoint, and to be honest with you, James Brendel and Chris Cyril, who run UCC and DPI Expo, they're not ones to be a top-down organization. They're not ones to come out and say, this is what we're going to do. They're ones to say, hey, let's bring all the competitors together and get that feedback and see what these guys want to do with the competition. Is this something you're going to be vocal about getting it back to a 1-truck challenge?
I'm not a very vocal person as it is anyways, but in my opinion, if I was able to cast a vote, then I would vote for 1 truck, 1 driver, 3 segments. The fans, from the feedback I was seeing, the fans find it hard to follow the teams along when there is changes in trucks and changes in faces. And if a truck was representing a team, that truck should be wrapped or color coordinated or color schemed or stickered similar, but there wasn't really much of that. So whenever it came time to sled pull and someone else pulled for another team member, you didn't know who it was. You didn't know who was driving it. It was just another sled puller down there that looked really good. Like all sled pullers look good, but there was no uniform look to the audience. It was kind of just, we know who drag race and dyno, but when it came time to sled, it was just a whole bunch of other trucks sled pulling.
Yeah, I think the only company that maybe held any type of formation would have been Tony Burkhart, Dirty Hooker Diesel, and that arguably is the only company that had 2 trucks from the same, shop. Yeah.
Also 2 well-known trucks.
Like trucks,
those trucks are well-known in the industry.
And that's a great example of how 1 shop can bring 2 trucks.
I like that.
That's a wonderful, and he's done that for years, right? Or not the 2-truck thing at the same event, but he's had multiple trucks for years, and everybody knows it.
Yep.
And they look good. They have a uniform look, and it displays his business very well. That if you do 2 trucks, that's how it has to be done, in my opinion.
And we've talked about it, we've talked about it with a couple of the other interviewees is, we know why James Brendel and Chris Cyril is doing this, right? They're trying to gain more spectators. They want more interest and they want more opportunity getting some of those sled pull guys in. But now that we have the introduction of ODSS the last couple of years, maybe it's something where we get PPL in and we have a sanctioned sled pull event there that weekend as well. That way you have the UCC going, you have some, professional sled pulling going, you have some professional drag racing going, and it just becomes one crazy weekend of diesel competition.
Yeah, and I had floated a question out to the Burkharts and I think to a few of the other competitors we've talked to about building a truck for UCC is very different than building a truck for ODSS or building a truck to run at PPL. Now you have a truck that's kind of designed around these multi-event competitions, right? Like the idea was from the start that you could take this to DPC and run it in 4 or 5 different competitions or 4 or 5 different events or segments and come out at the end and be an awesome all-around truck. If they did multiple UCCs throughout the year as opposed to just 1 UCC, so if they had multiple events, would you take your truck to multiple events? Is that something that would be viable option for Unrivaled?
I find it where I can only travel out of state big like this 2 or 3 times a year. And so whatever event I go to that is, 1,000 miles away, it needs to have multiple segments, because to me, it would be boring to enter this thing in a 590 index. Number one, I don't index very well. And then number two, if you go out first round and there's not a buyback, I just spent $2,500 dragging 8 people and all this stuff across the nation, and I'm out and I'm done for one rip that I broke out or I screwed up or I was late on the tree or whatever. So a competition that has multiple segments is so much more appealing, because number one, it shows versatility in diesel technology. Number two, it's just a lot more fun to go out there and hook it to a dyno, or hook it to the sled, or do a dirt drag, or do a drag race, or go cruise it down the street on something that's not meant to do that. So it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more entertaining. It's a hell of a lot more work, but man, the reward is so much better. So I don't really go to the ODSS thing. I never have. And my truck is not a race truck. If it was a 590 truck, it would have a single GT55 on it and fiberglass all the way around and make 1,200 horse and be fine, right?
Yeah.
And it would weigh 4,200 pounds, but that's not what I built, and that's not really what interests me. So the multiple segment is where it's at for me. And as I've been going down this diesel racing career, I started on the street, and the diesel power challenge is what started everything for me. It was so appealing because they weren't cage trucks. When I started building this truck in 2018, a 1,200 horsepower truck that could run 1020s would probably win the diesel power challenge.
Yeah, that's so true.
Well, that's like my mega cab now, my daily driver I'm sitting in right now. That can do all that. And I got this other hot rod. And so it just evolved. And I just happened to catch the industry on this upward swing of multiple segment competitions. Sarah Chapman brought back the King of the Street thing and renamed it the All Truck Challenge. And as soon as that came out, I was like, oh, that's me. I need to enter this, whatever I have to do. So we threw a cage in it because we were running faster than 635. And under her rules, you have to meet safety. Some of the other events have had very loose safety requirements, and then people have been getting hurt. Engines have now started blowing up and throwing pieces into the crowd. People have been burnt. So the safety went up. So the level of the truck had to go up. So I was like, screw it. Let's cage this really nice 07 5.9 Laramie truck that was just an immaculate truck with a 3-inch freaking hole saw through the floorboard 6 times. It almost brought me to tears. But what am I supposed to do? The haters are like, oh, that dually doesn't belong on the racetrack. Get that thing on the field. Get that thing hooked to a 48-foot gooseneck and go make money. And I'm like, no, I think we're going to make it faster. I think we're going to 4-link it, and we're going to throw a big motor in here. And the more hate has transpired, the more I'm driven to make it better, stronger, faster, more reliable. It's just kind of how it happened. And so here we are.
So now you said there's a dyno event that you'll be in, and that's in August, you said, correct?
Yes, sir. It is the Diesel on the Mountain in Bandimere in Denver, Colorado. And the Northwest Dyno Circuit will be there.
What does 2023 look like for you? UCC 2023, you throwing your hat into it or what?
I don't know. If there's a 2-truck rule, I have another chassis here that will probably have a drag truck. Okay. To be quite honest with you, I'm kind of tired of being an underdog or having a disadvantage due to wheelbase or weight or drivetrain layout. So I'm considering building a real truck, a truck with fiberglass doors and a fiberglass clip, and chop the frame front in half and set the motor back. You know, I'm ready to kind of get out of the street truck realm with the dually and get into a race truck program. But I would take the dually and I would probably chop the cage out, put a fresh cab on it that doesn't have holes all in it, and have a 2,000 or 2,500 horsepower street truck that me and my wife go to dinner in, and I drive to the local track and, you know, run 5s and drive home. Like, it just sounds great. Yeah. And I know that I can make the powertrain live, because it's living pretty good right now going down the track as heavy as we are with as much power as we make. So I want my street truck back, and I'm not afraid to build a race truck.
Chris, one of the things that I really wanted to dive into here was the setup and your Saturday night. What did that look like to go from making 2,600 horsepower on the dyno to going out and sled pulling?
Well, we had a lot of work to do, and I've only hooked to a sled 8 times. So what you saw was my 9th time to pull. And 4 of the times I've been on fire, And the other couple times we were just flexing the frame, and it was like hopping and bending, and you could see this big old gap between the bed and the cab. So on our way out of town, we refilled both mother bottles, and we bought 40 feet of 2-inch by 5/16 square tubing. And we went and we ran two 10-foot pieces from the rear hitch to the transmission cross member, and we welded them to the frame. And then we just put a whole bunch of trusses upwards and a whole bunch of cross members across the bottom. And we added like 200 pounds to the back of the truck, which is a terrible thing to do. But now I got a weight box. So we weighed 7,970 pounds. We were overweight, so we had to pull weights until we were underweight. And we were 26 inches within a 16th of an inch on the hitch. So we had maxed out every rule for sled pulling. And I went out there on a 2,300 horsepower tune-up and basically put it to the wood and grabbed overdrive and everything and did the best that I could. Looking back, I've learned a few things. You know, I just unlocked at the end instead of downshifting. But in the end, the motor did what it does best, and it just ran and ran and ran and kept running. I let it idle for 10 minutes afterwards. It was great.
Was it an eye-opener? Was it an eye-opener in any way to see a much lower power truck such as Eric Merchant pull and come in second place? Or is that anything that, like, no, throw a pedal to the wood, you know, all the power, and we're just going to go that route when we do the sled pull?
I don't know if it's an eye-opener. There's multiple strategies to get the job done. A lot of times experience comes into play, and you can definitely overpower a track, a racetrack, a sled track, a dyno. It's all possible to overpower it. So a lot of times it's about the application and management of power. So I don't think it was an eye-opener. I think that's why we have these competitions. Some people are better at segments than others.
I want to say you had almost the exact same story about sled pulling at DPC, which I believe was your first time ever hooking to a sled.
That was.
That was. I want to say your strategy has not shifted much in the last 3 years here, and eight, 9 hooks. I want to say it also was, I hooked to the sled, I went forward, I brought the spool up, and then I hit it. I gave it everything she's got.
Do you enjoy sled pulling?
Oh, it's a blast. It's extremely violent, hard on things, but man, it's fun.
Yes. For years, I would always make fun of my buddies. You know, they always built purpose-built sled pull trucks, and I was like, I don't see the enjoyment. I want to go to the track. And the first time I was in the passenger seat of a local charity pull by us, and I was like, oh, this was kind of cool. And the following year, I threw my hat into it and started doing sled pulling. And I'll tell you what, man, it is exhilarating. It's a ton of fun.
It's the most fun you'll have going 23 miles an hour.
Yeah. No lie there.
Look at you. Need some more ground speed, son.
Your 9 pulls, you're giving advice on it. Okay. All right, cool. I got Patterson's number.
That's right.
Oh, that's too funny.
Chris, I think everybody, anybody watching Diesel right now has definitely got you on the radar as somebody who's a very, very serious competitor, somebody who's grown massively on the national scene in a very short amount of time.
Well, also, too, you kept saying you don't want to be the underdog. You don't want to keep being the underdog. Other than a select few guys that are throwing shade, like Chris Patterson is a national name in competition, and you have a badass truck that has that signature green emerald color to back it up. Like, you have a respectable truck, you have a respectable setup, you have a respectable name. So, you know, I wouldn't consider yourself the underdog too much, because there's a lot of other guys on here that you placed much higher than. And, you know, again, you know, as far as building a badass truck that's versatile, you know, you prove that being the highest ranked truck as one truck to the team.
Yeah, what Chris is trying to say is we're pulling your underdog card. You made 3,000 horsepower 6 months ago. You don't get to call yourself an underdog. We're done.
Badass approved. You know, you come around, you tell dudes, fuck around, you're gonna find out. You know, that's how it is.
It says that. It also says built, not bought, and that's for a reason. But you know, what I mean is I'm ready for a regular cab. Maybe long wheelbase, maybe short wheelbase, but carbon fiber doors, carbon fiber cab, an aluminum motor, no water needed. Like, I'm ready to turn it up. I know what we can do on a cast block, and I'm very curious to see what an aluminum block would do, and going forward into the realm that I haven't went yet. So I'm looking forward to that learning experience and that journey. And then I'm going to take the green truck, the dually, in a different direction. I think it has served its purpose, and I think it's time to go do other things like race week and whatnot. I think it's going to be a blast.
That's awesome, man.
Cool.
We're so excited for it. Hey, before we let you go, is there anybody you want to give a shout out to?
Obviously, all my team members, my wife, putting up with this stuff is absolutely ridiculous. The amount of time that I spend here at the shop, and I neglect her, and she's the breadwinner, and she is my sugar mama, and she keeps this whole thing rolling. And then,
She have a sister?
no sisters, no sisters. And the guys here at the shop, Alex and Jake, keeping the shop running, Jeffrey and Riley, and Ty, and just the whole experience. And then April and Don at Flex Diesel. They've been nothing but the best through this whole thing, and they've had my back when we weren't making power and we were popping engines at 1,000 horse. And he's shown me things and shown me the way and how you do it. And we've continued to build on that relationship and have had very good success. OptiLube has been nothing but great with the oils. I can't speak highly enough of 6 pulls in 30 minutes and 168-degree oil temperature. I mean, there's something to be said about that. We did change the oil in the engine. That's all we did. We didn't run the head. We didn't adjust the valves. We changed the oil. So now we're going to send that off for analysis, and that'll be very good to see those results. The BD Diesel race team, like the sense of a family and friendship and camaraderie to work together with one goal to represent all 3 Duramax, Power Stroke, Cummins, and just represent clean, strong power. Everybody like Valair has been great. Valair Clutch right down the street. The Yukon gear and axle. We broke some axles and we didn't break them this time. We had multiple axles, multiple spools, multiple gears, and we didn't break them. Overall, it's just been very, very, very good, and we look forward to moving forward in the industry.
That's awesome. We look forward to watching your progress and seeing your guys' success.
I got one special shout out. This one's been waiting. Everybody's been dying to know who tunes this thing, and I'm very honored to say it's Dominic at Starlight Tuning. Dominic, the approach he has is amazing with how he tunes, and we've had very, very, very good results, being very clean and bringing power in with a bunch of stock parts that a lot of people will be surprised by. So I want to give a very special shout out to Starlight Diesel and the ability that they have to make a whole lot of power and not need exotic ECMs and all this wild, crazy rail sensor pressure and big map sensors. We have a stock 6.7 rail sensor, stock 6.7 map sensor, and it brings in power clean and quick on an 849 ECM. So special shout out to Dominic.
For sure.
Very cool.
Awesome. Last question. If you were going to give one piece of advice to somebody who's showing up to UCC for their first year next year, what would that advice be?
Man, like start with about $500,000 or something. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you need to start with a whole lot of money and sleep for 2 weeks ahead of time, because you're not going to sleep at all. It's extremely difficult to turn and burn on a project like this. It is a good level of fun, but it's almost bittersweet because you're driven so hard, your emotions are so high, you're exhausted, that you don't actually take the time to enjoy meeting people that you talk to for years on the internet. And then they can come and go from your pit and you won't even realize who you were speaking with. So it's very disappointing that I didn't get the time to spend with fans and people that really look up to me. And I apologize that if I came off a little bit heated after the dyno, or if we were under distress when you came by at 2:00 in the morning for welding sled pull infrastructure or whatever. I don't take it personal, but I wish that there was more time to enjoy it, but there's so much time spent, converting and swapping and repairing to be competitive. Other than that, man, I love the event. I love how it goes. And I very much look forward to the next one.
Absolutely. You heard it here. Chris Patterson committed for 2023. We'll see all you guys there. Chris and I will be there as well. Listeners, viewers, stick around, stay tuned in. We'll have a few more of these interviews around some of the top UCC competitors coming at you here in the near future. Thanks for joining us.
Hey guys, this is Jeremy Garnett from the Diesel Performance Podcast. Behind me we have our 95 Hummer that a couple years ago I got the pleasure of doing a Duramax conversion to it. This conversion here has an LBZ in it that we got to install with an Allison, one of our Allisons from Duramax Tuner behind it. And then I actually got the pleasure of doing the complete suspension. So I did a King suspension on it. Later on I replaced it with ADS shocks with remote mounted reservoirs on it. So to get that nice big ride on it, nice good ride. Today, we're just gonna get it out of storage because it's been sitting there for a while. And we're gonna go through it and just look at the fluids and stuff like that. What I did realize before we put it away is that we had our trans temp was getting warm. So we wanted to address that issue. So that's why I have the hood off it, to get a better look at the cooling stack and see what our trans cooler was doing. We decided that we wanted to put a new trans cooler on it with a remote mounted fan on it. So it'll actually help cool the trans lines a little bit better than the trans a little bit better. So that's what we're working on now. I'll keep you updated.
Thanks for joining us today, guys. This has been Paul Wilson
And Chris Emke.
Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon.
I'm going to run it till I won't run anymore.